when those DNCs, the do not calls and the, do not knock registers and everything like that come out, the easiest way to get around those is advertising,
Yeah.
100%. And so if you're putting a proximity advertising on social channels, where it's Facebook or it's anything like that, the geographical targeting, if you're doing that, and you put value in front of people, people will give you their information. If you
Hmm.
give them actual value, whether it's, yeah, and it could be as simple as, this is the list of every home that's sold in the last year, and
Yeah.
that's publicly available data, but it's just stuff that they can't really find very easily. So if you say, here, download every home that's, sold in the Forest Ranch area in 2022, and what they sold for, the bed bath, the square footage, everything like that, and you put that on a graphic, and you target your farm with it on direct advertising, you don't have to go door knock.
Welcome to Rethink Real Estate. My name is Ben Brady, and this is a real estate podcast aimed to deliver sales strategies, marketing tips, and business insights from industry experts and myself to build a listing focused business for the future. Let's get into it. Well, we're back with Mr. Chris Cochran here on Rethink Real Estate. Folks, if you haven't already jumped on and given us a follow, like, or subscribe to us, if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening to a podcast, it would mean the world to us. It immensely helps us to cast the audience out even further, especially when there's valuable content coming out of the real estate marketing machine himself, Mr. Chris Cochran. First of all, folks, if you're watching, Chris is in a little bit of a different background to when he was on one of the other episodes that he was on. Mate, have you edged that guitar in just a little closer to the camera?
I leave it there so I can keep an eye on it when I'm talking to you, so my 4-year-old doesn't come in and break it. Like, it is my prized possession, and if my 4-year-old comes in here and breaks my guitar, at least I would see it happen while I'm staring at you. So
The beautiful part about this is that I've heard that you've marched the family out of the house so there's no screaming or anything. Is that right?
correct. Yep, I've shipped them off. They are going to now work in Australia just like we used to. So yeah.
Very good indeed. But folks, I guess that today the main thing that I wanted to talk to Chris about today was marketing automation in the real estate landscape. This is a topic that we see people very shallow on from their own independent perspective. You've either got the agents that have got really big teams, they've employed somebody to do all of their marketing content, or they've outsourced it to somebody. So I want to talk about that today, Chris, with you. I want to talk about the automation factors. I want to talk about just some of your opinions on that. But I also want to talk about the agents that outsource them the so-called automation of their marketing as well, because I really feel like it just doesn't hit. Like you can tell so clearly when an agent has seriously outsourced their social media presence or any of their digital presence whatsoever and are just not interacting with it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the hardest thing for any marketing agency as a whole in any industry is relating to the business that they're serving. And so if you're outsourcing to someone who really doesn't have a vested interest in your business, you're not going to see success. They're not going to be invested in actually you reaching the right audience, you reaching the right audience with the right content, and then reaching them at the right time. So I always think that's the hardest thing for any agency. But like when you try to find it from a cheap outsource situation, it's going to be even worse. Like the best agencies in the world are the ones who care, and they charge a pretty penny to care. So I think it's you could like buyers, sellers, everybody can spot it a mile away when you see the same listing posting over and over and over with the same graphic, just sold, just like happy clients and all this stuff, and it's just kind of generic tech speak
Mhm.
in the captions, and it's not really providing any real value to anybody who's looking to sell or buy a home these days.
So I guess that like let's say that somebody doesn't have the capabilities in order to actually do it themselves. Like they just, the technology illiteracy out there at the moment is certainly quite high. Certainly when you look at the average age of a realtor is that it's certainly up there a little bit further, and if they're not willing to take the time in order to, a lot of realtors aren't even willing to take the time in order to train themselves, let alone, train themselves on something incredibly new. You can see that reaction to some realtors when auction comes up. They get a little bit prickly about it because it's something new and it's ultimately a threat. Where would you say is a good starting point for an agent that might be doing, maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 transactions a year, 50% of their business's listings, 50% of its buyers? What do you think is a viable plan for them by way of whether it's automation or whether it's an agency, or what are your thoughts?
I think there's a couple different ways. There's a way to get your voice heard through automation, 100%, and working with someone who's an automation specialist or an agency or anything like that to basically get your voice out there at mass. And we're talking about your voice after, open homes that you're running, new listings, farming a certain area, little things like that can be automated and they can actually work at scale in the real estate industry. The other side of this is grab someone who's actually vested in your business. Grab someone who is close to you. I started as a marketing assistant on a team, and this was 12 years ago or something like that. I was very cheap. I was very cost effective at the time, which was great. I wasn't making anything near like a normal living wage, which was awesome. But I was fresh out of college and I was hungry and I wanted to learn. And so, yeah, I wanted to learn the real estate industry. I wanted to learn how to sell homes and stuff like that. But I also had this marketing insight and this marketing capabilities. So I paired that. I paired my social media, my website presence, and everything like that with a team, and was able to then, provide value while they also provided value to me. So I think there's ways that you can do it from both sides. You can go external and you can basically pick the avenues that you want to be successful in. And I would say the avenues from like, do you want to be successful on Facebook? Do you want to be successful on Instagram? Pick one, focus, don't go all over the board. Focus to where your clientele is, and then grab an agency from that standpoint who can automate some stuff, or bring someone in house who can kind of document and kind of capture what you guys are doing, and do it at a very cost effective thing. Do it from an internship. Do it from fresh out of college, and teach them the ropes. Teach them how it is to run in a real estate business. And I would guarantee if they're anything like me, they'll get addicted to it and they'll stay up all night trying to figure out this puzzle that is the real estate marketing game.
So I guess that, like, so let's say that somebody went down the avenue of actually, putting somebody on in a part-time perspective. They might be fresh out of college or something along those lines. And I guess that, would you have them, like, let's say that they've got a geographical farm area, would you have them sort of do some research on that farm area, pull a database of people together, try and then digitally door knock them by way of, following them, or asking for them to follow you on social media or on that individual platform? What would you say if you were going to give like a 3 or 4 or 5 step plan for that individual person? If they were going to make that investment, what would you say that person should be doing?
Yeah, I would say give them control of the database. That's what my team did for me. So I went in immediately to an absolute data mess, completely, and that's like sugarcoating it right there. There was 80,000 contacts, of which maybe 800 knew who we were and actually wanted to do business with us, and we were a pretty sizable team at that point. So kind of whittling that down to whatever that is, 10%, is pretty drastic at that point. And so give them full access of that. Let them categorize the database how they want to, and then pick out which social media or which platform, doesn't even have to be a social media, but which platform you're going to be successful on. So, are you going to focus on blogs? Are you going to focus on white papers? Are you going to focus on Facebook? Are you going to focus on Instagram, YouTube, like whatever it is at that point? Let them then focus. Because you're never going to get anything done trying to kind of do a shotgun approach of spreading everything too thin. And then I would then focus on the target areas that you really, really, really want to capture. So we focused specifically in Rancho Bernardo, in the North County of San Diego, and then we dove in even deeper than that. So then we focused on to the Forest Ranch area and the Greens, specifically, and we did everything from hold events to actual door knocking. I went door knocking, like, and little things like that teach this person basically the ropes, basically teach them how to be a young agent, a hungry agent. I held open homes. I was there for the open homes. I was there on listing presentations. Entwining them and entrenching them in your business is the only way you're going to get content that is actually valuable to home sellers and buyers. They start understanding the conversations and the questions that are being asked from those specific people.
Yeah. So really, there's the nurturement of what already exists in somebody's business. So let's say that they're an
Yep.
agent that's been established for a period of time, they can afford or has the time and energy in order to actually put somebody on like this. Is that then they're obviously going through and refining what is already there from a nurture perspective and being more aware and top of mind. And then there's also then the growth avenue of how do we grow that SOI? How do we grow that sphere? How do we then keep in contact with them as much as possible? So they're all really great points. Yeah, one of the things like, let's dive down deeper into the avenue of where would somebody find somebody like this, Chris? Like, I know that that's a very broad question, but I've got to be honest, is that the question that I get so often from anybody that we communicate with is that, or the statement that is made is, Ben, I want to create a team. And automatically, I know exactly what's going to happen. They're going to try and do it for a period of time. They're going to find somebody that's okay. And then that person is going to actually leave them. And then they're going to feel devastated about it. They're going to feel betrayed. And then what happens when they bring a next person in, if they actually even go there, which I would say even 25% of people will bring somebody else in, then they don't give them full control and they don't give them full access because they feel like they're going to be, for lack of better terminology, betrayed again. Okay, but where I'm going with all of this is it like, I think it's important to use that first person, or even if you're not using a first person, to build some type of system in place. So I don't want it to sound like people are a commodity and that you just burn through them. But if you lose somebody, then they walk back into a system that you're trying to build, or use that person to build a system, document that system. So the next person comes into a so-called system. So it then, the learning curve isn't as steep. So tell me, where would somebody go and find somebody like this, Chris? Where could they go and look?
Yeah, well, first let me scale back that a little bit. In my personal experience, so I've never built a team. That's just not my expertise. But from my standpoint, I stepped into somebody else's role. Same exact scenario that you're speaking about. They moved on. They started their own marketing agency. Good for them. And they put it on an ad. The team put out an ad on Craigslist, and I was already kind of in the area, and I was looking to kind of find my way into an office, and they put it on an ad, and I answered the ad, and that's how I joined in. And then same thing happened right after me. So I then learned from the person who came right before me. So there was a kind of a transitional period where they hired that agency, this one person agency. I learned a little bit about what they were doing and what they were having success with on that team, and then I passed the same thing on too. So it was kind of like they were propping and they were building and empowering this role to start their own agency over
Mm,
and over and over, which was great. So then the clientele, like the person like myself afterwards, I started my own agency afterwards, and then I would have all the clientele of the people in the office. And so I was able to get a leg up, and they were encouraging this situation. They were encouraging us to learn from the other agents in there and then to get close with the other agents in there, not from a competition standpoint, but from
yeah,
like actually just learning what works. And we're all in different farm areas. We were covering, San Diego County, which is very massive. It's not
yeah,
like we're in, a one horse town. And there was plenty to go around at that point. So um, I would say if you're running a team, employ the same metric. You want them to have success. You want them to leave you. You want them to outgrow you. Because if that happens, that means that they provided so much value to your business that they get to go somewhere else at this point. And so and it there should be a miss, there should be a hole when they leave your business, but that hole can be refilled by having good relationships, treating them like human beings, and then letting them or encouraging them to upskill the person who then comes in and steps into that role directly afterwards. So I would say that is the number one thing. But from where to find these people, we've posted on college job boards, we've posted on Indeed, LinkedIn, Facebook. Like we've posted kind of all over the place to find these people. We've used our own resources and people we have networked with. We've gone on, literally, we've hired someone in the past. I've hired someone in the past. We went on a listing presentation, and their kid was a photographer and a videographer and wanted to make YouTube content. We said perfect. We love that. Like we want you to learn that for yourself and do everything like that. But if you want to ever kind of learn that from a business standpoint, we love to have you in our office. And
yeah.
that person stepped in. They started shooting content in our office all the time, and then they stayed. And they transitioned into the business world from some skills that they already had. So
Yeah.
you can find them anywhere.
Well, I think that this is a really good turning point here, Chris. That we really need to make an emphasis on is the fact that there's no question that the reason that you've come back on board in our business is that we've identified that content is the new is the new resource or the new commodity out there in the real estate space, in any of the business spaces. Is that content is now king, and again, is that if we don't embrace that, we could be really an individual could be really left behind. I would go as far as to say that this role could be more important than an assistant, Okay, more important than, you know, bringing a buyer's agent on board. Now, this role can obviously play multiple individual lanes, but I think that if it had a primary focus in order to make sure that you are top of mind, that they are, you know, focusing on your digital presence out there, and because that digital presence is so vast now, and you need to attack so many different avenues to have any type of effect. Now, I know Chris said, you know, do one individual, you know, lane and pick that, but that's in the beginning, and then you need to start branching out, I believe. Do you think that's important, Chris?
Yeah, and when I say one individual lane for this role, I mean from like your external communications. I'm not saying one individual lane for like this role has to be all solely focused on, making my Instagram presence better. No, no,
Mm,
no, no. That there's not enough time in the day, and like because of the way the algorithm works, and because of the way like mass following and everything like that's been kind of suppressed, and you can't do stuff like that. That there's no real need to be clicking buttons on Instagram every single day, 8 hours a day. That's just not a situation that would be beneficial for your business. That's where I would say this role plays in the other aspects of the business that are really important. And that's where I would say, it goes into your marketing automation, your email marketing, your website. It goes into some of the admin roles. I've seen great marketing people who are also TCs
yeah.
in the business and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different ways, and whatever their interest kind of leads them into, and whatever you're trying to match from like a role to position, I would say let them play in other places too. Like I would say, I've seen marketing people answer the front desk,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you could do
Yeah.
kind of anything at that
Yeah.
point.
The role of curiosity means that there's a diversity in their ability, there's a diversity in their curiosity, I guess. So the one question I've got for you, would you recommend that somebody obviously that's going to make an investment of this because they understand that this is the future of real estate, this is the future of any real progressive business, is that do you think it would be like I know that there's people listening right now going, they're zoning out and they're just like, this is way too intimidating. There's no way I'm going to do this. But would you recommend potentially bringing that person on in order to manage a relationship with an external agency for maybe a few months, if you could get a few month contract to then sort of learn the ropes a little bit from them, and then sort of put their strategy in play and remove the agency? Is that an approach, or what do you think?
That's definitely an approach, and it has been successful in the past. And that's kind of the roles that I've handled in certain businesses in the past, where I've stepped in. There's been an agency kind of leading the ship at that point, and then it's my job to manage them. But also at the same time, I'm learning from their skills at that point. And if you're young enough, but I would say the biggest thing from a business, and a caveat to this, is can your business afford that? Can your
Mm,
business afford to go get an agency and stuff like that? The team that I joined when I was very young, they did have someone external running their website, and they did have someone external doing their print marketing and stuff like that. And I was able to learn from them, and I was learning how to put things in certain places and make it look good on graphic design, and then same thing for the website and what drives traffic and everything like that. I was able to learn a little bit about that, but the business was able to like afford that. And
mm,
so I don't know if every business out there can. And if you're only looking to hire a one person shop at this point, that's where an agency probably doesn't make sense for you to be able to kind of teach someone. Now there are courses, and there are live events and stuff like that. Like I learned so much by going to things like Inman and things
mm,
like SDAR and NAR and all the conferences and stuff like that. And that was one of the cool things about the team that I joined, was they were very encouraging of going external and looking at learning resources, and where could you learn from. And they were like, you want to take the day and you want to go learn how to go to this digital marketing conference, we'll pay for it, and we'll
yeah.
kind of
Okay.
fund those things. And that was huge to the success of our business.
Yep. So I guess that if let's scale it down a little bit now, let's say that someone's not employing somebody on board.
Yep.
Let's say that it's an agent that is not doing enough business in order to bring this role on, or can't substantiate this role. Is that automation has been a word that you've said a few times now, and automation is incredibly attractive for somebody on an independent nature to not have to think about it as much. It doesn't say that it's going to do it all for you, but let's talk automation for a minute. Can you give us an indication of what some examples would be of automating different parts of somebody's real estate business?
Yeah, first off, I think this is the untapped gem of the entire the real estate industry, in my opinion. If I was a sole realtor and I was kind of farming an area, I would put all my eggs in the automation basket because I think it is the way. Like you said, content is king, but I also think at the second part of that, data is queen at that point. Like we you and marrying them together is where automation comes in. So if you have really good data and you have really good content, you can marry those together, and those are called automation. And so one of the biggest thing from that standpoint, I think every open home should have automation around it. Someone checks into your open home, they should receive text messages before they leave the door. And that's building your buyer funnel. That's building sellers that are neighbors stopping in by, and they're saying, "Wow, they did this." And it's next level from what an agent would stand for. Every just listed, every just sold, every price reduction, everything should have automation from a communication standpoint, from an email standpoint out there. There should be posts on social medias that you're sending out and everything like that. But you could change them all, and so you can have all this basically set up where you set the listing, and you put the listing together and put it in the MLS, and then directly after putting it in the MLS, you're focusing on the next 2 weeks worth of scheduling for that property. Property goes into escrow, great, like that's awesome. Turn off all of those posts that you have going out in the next couple of weeks. But at that point, at least you have all of them done, so you can focus on your business and not actually focus on what's happening on social media or anything like that.
Mm.
I used to sit down every time we had a listing, and we had a lot of listings at the time, and I would sit there at night from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. or whatever it took me, and I would schedule posts out for literally the next month, next 30 days for that property, in that market that was perfect for us, and so I knew it was going to sell probably within 30 days. So I would post out for 30 days, and I would have all these posts scheduled. I'd have all these emails scheduled, and I would put them on a content calendar that I knew what was going to happen at that point.
So give me an example of some of the products or some of the things that you would use in order to automate, but then give an example, like let's talk about an example for an agent. A property comes on the market, a listing comes on the market, okay? What type of automation or what type of posts should we be looking at, and how do we automate them?
Yeah, yeah. So the products that we used at the time were our CRMs, and so we had everything from the top producer CRM to Boomtown ROI and everything like that. So we used the CRM that we already had. So from a scheduling perspective, from an email perspective, if you don't have that luxury at your brokerage, that's fine. You can, or if you just don't prefer their tools, that's fine as well. I would say external tools that I would look at is stuff like Mailchimp, stuff like HubSpot, stuff like there's a bunch of email platforms. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but the
There's so
yeah.
many of those. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I would
So
focus on
email's key. We need
e
email automation.
hundred
What
percent.
what's your opinion if an email goes out like now? Do I do the social post at the same time, or should I wait? Or
Yeah. So usually what happened for us was the social post had happened first. So the social post went out first, and when I say social post, one of the biggest pet peeves I have in the real estate industry is social posts with Zillow links. And maybe I'm old school, and I come back from the age where we were still fighting Zillow, and I understand that battle is lost, and we've kind of moved moved on from that. But posting a listing to Zillow or a Zillow link on your social media profile is just giving them access to every other property at
yeah,
that point, and they
yeah.
can quickly move on from your property and go somewhere else. So I would. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying post social links and everything like that.
Well,
I'm
the
saying
other thing, sorry, I don't want to interrupt this, but the other thing that I just is popped up in my mind is that I saw an article the other day. The Real Deal put it out that Meta is actually stopping companies from putting actual listing posts up on their feed. So that's where another even factor is that video is king, and not just these tiles that go out there, announcing that listing and things along those lines. Sometimes it's actually better to do a quick little selfie video, regardless of the imperfections, and tell everybody about your listing, and that might be automated. I'm not sure. Thoughts?
Yeah, exactly. So like that's where I was leaning into. I was saying the post at that point are actual photos of the property of unique selling points.
Mm.
It's videos of you walking through the property. It's talking about the neighborhood. It's talking about the restaurant down the street and stuff like that. Like it's things that kind of intertwine and let people envision themselves moving into that property, as well as at the same time it's things that helps you connect with sellers that are in that or potential sellers that are going to be in that area as well. So kind of you propping up this listing hopefully in turn allows you to sell a property similar to that listing in that same neighborhood in the
I think
future.
because that's a mental set that everyone has to get around. As soon as you talk about the automation process of what we're doing with a property once it goes onto the marketplace, is that you're not actually appealing to try and sell that property. Very, 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 very few properties sell based on the emails that you send out or the social media that you're doing. What you're doing is obviously communicating to your network and the agent and the neighborhood that you're an active person within that neighborhood, and this is the type of exposure that you're giving that individual listing, so that then they can see how active you are and then attracting them to you and getting an opportunity in order to sell their home when possibly they're thinking of doing so.
Yeah, exactly. I always looked at it as I'm not going to sell the home from someone walking in the door. And granted, I will like it's going to happen. There's going to be out of the 80 people who show up to my open house, there's going to be 3 to 5 who are very interested, and we can talk them in and kind of figure out some offers and put them on the table. But my thought processes was there's probably 15 to 20 people out of that 80 who are just neighbors and they're curious of what this home is, and if not more. And then the other ones would be buyers at that point, but they're not interested in this specific property at this specific time. But a good portion of those would not have an agent. And so
Yeah.
that's how I looked at it. And from an automation standpoint, the moment they left my listing, my open house, I wanted to be in their pockets. I wanted to be in their pockets when it came to a text message, when it comes to an email, whatever it is. I would have everybody sign in on open house register the moment they would come into the property, and then I would be sending out text messages through easy texting or any platform that I kind of had a text messaging platform, and I would send them texts the moment they left. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by my property. By the way, here's a link, and I would have a predetermined link that I already had for other properties that are on the market in this area. If you would
Yep.
like to see them, or if you'd like to schedule a private showing versus going to their open houses, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to show you them. And
Right.
it turned my buyer's business around
Yeah.
like tenfold at that
Yeah.
point, because then I'm getting in front of people and they're like, wow, my agent wouldn't send me all these properties. Wow, my agent wouldn't offer to show me this on a tomorrow. and
Yeah.
and we were doing that. And so little things like that came from automation, that came from every 30 minutes in my open house, literally just clicking a button on my laptop that's sitting on there in a hotspot, and say send email to all these people who send through my register at this point. And so
Yeah.
little things like that are game changing for a business. And I know some agents get away from open houses and stuff like that, but there's other avenues to capitalize on the simplicity of automation like that.
So, like, it's also like an idea of a property. Like, if you're farming a neighborhood and you've got a certain number of contacts within that neighborhood, and a property sells and you didn't even sell it, but letting them know from an automation text message that goes out to them because you've managed to collect enough data within that farm area itself, because that's why you farm, in order to nurture the data that you can collect in order to keep in touch with people, and then sending them a quick text to say, hey, 38 Smith Street sold for this amount of money, just recorded, it was this, and keeping them updated. Here's a link to the actual listing itself or something along those lines. But what we were talking about before, mate, is that we were talking about, a property goes like, let's try and do some type of sequence from a property going live all the way through to it closing. Let's talk about the different things that you can do, and then we can summarize it again with some of the products that people can look into in order to automate.
Yeah. So when the property went live, the moment a property went live, we had some kind of like external website builder at that point that built a landing page for us. And there's a bunch of them out there that are kind of built a quick landing page, or you could do that again yourself if you have the skills or the team or anything like that. So we used a website landing page builder that would build a landing page out there for us. From that standpoint, we would then schedule an email that would go out, and that email would have photos in it. It would be very robust email, and then on the bottom, it would also have similar properties that were either in our brokerage that we can leverage, or they were our other properties that were similar to this property. So they'd be packed full of information, and we would also have community tips and stuff like that in this same email that would go out. And so we would curate those every single month. We would basically bring together like 5 or 6 community things that were going on, whether it's everything from like t-ball tournaments to anything that people would be interested in. And so we were putting all those together in this same property basically announcement that would go out there, so that people would open it and people would consistently find value in it. And down the road they became so good that we ended up partnering with local businesses to put coupons in them and stuff like that at that
Mm.
point. So we would do like the winery and Rancho Bernardo winery and the Rancho Bernardo Inn and stuff like that, where we would put in there, people would open it even more because we would have coupons and stuff in there, which was great. But little things like that were great. So we would send that email out. We would have a social post that precluded that. It would basically be either the day before or earlier in the day at that point. That social post would then get shared throughout our entire team and our entire brokerage. So we basically went around and tried to elevate, and it's similar to what the team here at Harcourts does, where it's a community based post. So
Yep.
anytime we post something, we encourage the entire team to share it. And so we did the same thing. We set up a WhatsApp channel. I think is what it was at the time. It was either that or WeChat, and then we would post the link to the post that we were sharing out there, and literally every one of our team members in the entire office would share this listing at that point, so then we can use it as a megaphone. It makes them look better. It makes them look like they're tied more to the
Yeah,
property.
it's ease of communication or ease of opportunity for the agents to actually be able to do that. So anybody within your agent community, if they could share that listing, hey guys, here's a link, please share it. We don't mind even if you're claiming it as your own listing, as long as you're giving it the exposure that it needs. Quick
Exactly.
question. Quick question. While we get to this point, is that obviously making it easy for everyone to share it. But you mentioned at the beginning that you would create a landing page for that individual property. Is that to push all the traffic to? Is that to
Yeah.
is that yeah?
Yeah, ideally, and it was again the aspect of not wanting to send them to Zillow. So it was the aspect of we don't want them to send to a place where they can have easy access to every single listing at that
Mm,
point. Like if they want that, they have Zillow, they have the app for Zillow, they have it in their pockets. But if we're gonna like actually move efforts and paid and everything like that to drive someone somewhere, we're gonna send them to a place that we can control. We can send
right.
them to a place that we can have guides on there for how to buy your first home. We can send them to a place where we can have things where we can capture information and actually create leads at that point
Yeah.
from our standpoint. And it makes it easier for them to reach out to us. As you know, in Zillow, and even at the time, they would sponsor a bunch of different agents on your listing, and they
Yeah.
would put those agents up there for the agents who paid. And we didn't want, like, we're doing the effort, this is our listing at this point, we didn't want
Yeah.
someone else to be able to capitalize on that, specifically from our standpoint.
Yeah, there's products out there at the moment like Real Scout as well, guys. So that
Yep.
then you can send them a link to a listing, but then any other listing that they go and look at after that is that then it's got your name and contact information on it. You can obviously see what other listings that they've shown interest in, so that then you can reach out and obviously have a conversation with them about that. So after going through and sharing it, getting the team or the office or whoever it is, as many people as possible to share it, what would be the next sequence?
Yeah, and so just to preclude that a little bit, we would all that would be automated from our standpoint outside of the photos for the listing itself. So we would build automation specifically through Zapier at the time. There's other avenues. I think Make is one of them that we use specifically in Harcourts. But we would use Zapier at the time, and we would basically shove everything from the WhatsApp post to to everything through that platform, so that we didn't have to do it. The beginning part would be us having the post, and then from there, everything that trickled on would be kind of automated at that point. So from there, we would do a social sharing thing. We would then do an automated advertising at that point. So we would do on Facebook ads specifically. We used to call this the digital door knocking experience, where we would basically drop a pin on the property that we are selling. We would put a radius around there, and we would target every person over a certain age group who most likely is selling at that point. Not most likely is selling, but most likely is a homeowner at that point. And we would target all of them with the same property, and we would put specific messaging on there, be like, new property to the market, and we would even say, come stop by our open house. We encourage neighbors to check this out. This home's price value, or what this home sells for, is going to directly influence your home. Please come by. Please come stop by, and we can chat. We had more
So
people come in through that specifically and want to know what their home is worth, because we would then call it out in the advertising,
yeah.
that this home is going to influence your home. And it's true.
Yeah, that's really good wording. This property sale will influence your property sale. Please come by and check it out. Like, so all of it's interesting how you're saying that all of this marketing is all about getting a point where they come and either meet you and you can collect some type of data from them by way of actually then building your sphere of influence. This speaks to our business planning process and our business planning template that is available out there. Obviously, we can put it in the show notes, or you guys can reach out to us, ben.brady@harcourtsauctions.com or chris.cochran@harcourtsauctions.com, and we can send you the business planning template, which is all focused on doing all of these actions in order to build into a sphere of influence. with the privacy laws that are getting as tight as what they ultimately are. You look at Australia now, Chris, and you know the Australian real estate market as well as New Zealand, is that there's a do not knock register, let alone
Yeah.
a do not call register. So if we're not building our process and we're not building our marketing around capturing data of people that are selling in that neighborhood or homeowners in that neighborhood, then once the privacy laws come out, you'll see what happened in Australia and New Zealand is 50% of people trying to start off in the industry got completely wiped out because of the fact that they didn't have that data source or those relationships that were ultimately built.
And that's what I think is the biggest caveat to this is so when those DNCs, the do not calls and the do not knock registers and everything like that come out, the easiest way to get around those is advertising,
Yeah.
100%. And so if you're putting a proximity advertising on social channels where it's Facebook or it's anything like that, the geographical targeting, if you're doing that, and you put value in front of people, people will give you their information. If you
Hmm.
give them actual value, whether it's yeah, and it could be as simple as this is the list of every home that's sold in the last year. And
Yeah.
that's publicly available data, but it's just stuff that they can't really find very easily. So if you say, here, download every home that's sold in the Forest Ranch area in 2022, and what they sold for, the bed bath, the square footage, everything like that, and you put that on a graphic and you target your farm with it on direct advertising, you don't have to go door knock. That was one of the biggest things. Is as a person, I mean, everyone hates to door knock. I would say there's very few people, and they might
Agreed.
have yeah they might have
Yeah, yeah.
something going crazy with them.
I often say that about expired listings is that it's like people that get on the phones, and don't get me wrong, this is a really really large part of our business, and people out there, but the mental stamina and the mental tenacity that you need to get up 5 days a week for however long you're going to do it for, and talk to people that don't want to talk to you and tell you to go away. You've got to have a different sort of level of rejection that you're comfortable with.
100%. It's like I would never run a marathon or like an Ironman or something like that. I appreciate the people who do it, but I would never do it. And so like, and I tried it. I did the door knocking. I walked through and did all that stuff, and I said there has to be a smarter way. There has to be a better and easier way. And that's where I started looking at automation through Facebook advertising and everything. How can we advertise on Instagram? How can we provide value so they actually want to talk to us? They
Yeah.
invite us to their home. They want us to knock on their door. Like that was kind of the big thing. And how does it also empower our door knocking efforts at that point as well? Because if we constantly are in front of them on social media and they feel like we're already intertwined with them, like Ben, you're running the podcast and everything like that, people start to feel like they already know you when they
Yeah.
listen to you for hours and hours on end, at 100 plus episodes. They feel the same way when you start putting ads in front of them and it's valuable ads and stuff like that. So when you go door knock, it is easier for them to open the door and they're like, hey, I think I know you. I've
Yeah.
seen you somewhere. And it's like, no, I literally moved here 6 months ago, but I've been targeting your home for three of those. So that's why you know me. So
So as we get down to it, you would target people around it to pull them into the open house. Now, let's say that the property goes into escrow inevitably. Okay, or do you give them updates like so that ad is running the entire time as that property is on the market? Now, property is going to sit on the marketplace a little bit longer, in the time effect of where we're recording this episode at the moment, Chris. So, I guess that. Do you just keep that same ad running the
no.
entire time, or what do you do?
So everything for our business specifically was centered around open houses. 100%. For me, 100% because I moved to San Diego. I was originally from the Pacific Northwest. I had no sphere of influence, so the open
Mm,
houses for me were key at that point. Like I needed people to show up to these open houses so that we can build our database because I didn't have a database.
yeah,
And we're
yeah.
sitting in these Brian Buffini meetings and everything like that. And they're like, you got to target your sphere of influence. And I was like, I know six people in San Diego. I work with five of them, and so like I knew nobody was looking to buy or sell a home, and so I had to figure this out. So yeah, I would target them around the open house, and we created these open houses that were like events, and we specifically wanted to make them a big deal at that point. So all of our ads ran to that. Now this is whatever your big event was. I mean, this could be an auction day. This could
Yep,
be
yep.
whatever your event is. Your big aha moment for the property. That's what I would target your ads around, and I would keep them within your budget. So if you only have $100, $150 to spend on this from a property marketing standpoint, space that out for the next week before that, and don't run it before, like, anytime before that. So
Yeah. So it's for those of us that are dummies when it comes to this. So again, like at the end of the day, I'm a little far removed from it because Chris, you're the one that does a lot of that stuff for us at the moment. As the journey we go through with Harcourts Auctions is that, like, can you set budgets on
yeah.
properties? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so you can set a total budget, a total lifetime budget, like when it comes to advertising on any platform. So if you think that your demographic is on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, like, you can set total lifetime budgets, and then you can also set daily budgets. So daily budgets are great. I would say we come from the Australian market a little bit. Like, I come from the American, but then I went to Australia. They do this hand over fist over there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, and they do this because they have this thing called vendor paid marketing over there, where the seller, there's their term for vendor. So the seller actually pays for a lot of the marketing
Yeah.
efforts that happen for properties. While here, an agent has to take on that responsibility most of the time here. And so an agent is very reluctant to give part of their commission or give part of their fees away, to then market the
Well,
property effectively.
it's ultimately the upfront cost of it before they're
Exactly,
actually
it's the
being paid.
risk.
It's the
Yeah.
risk of that doesn't come into the play. So marketing it all through to the actual event itself in order
Yep.
to then pull as much data as you possibly can, and then you're running multiple running that or for the lifetime spend or anything along those lines. Now, the one
Yep.
I don't want to I don't sorry I keep getting off track a little bit, but people always think that Google AdWords are the way to go, or like promoting it on Google and stuff. Like, Chris, you were the one that opened my eyes to that. Is that there's just no chance you're outspending any of these big players in order to get any type of real traffic on Google, correct?
Yeah, the only time you just have to get very niche and very targeted, to your advertising. So,
Okay.
if you're going to outspend the players, Zillow and all them, and Trulia, Redfin, everything like that, they're all going to win when it comes to and even a lot of the companies like Compass and stuff like that. A lot of them are going to win, when someone's searching San Diego real estate or
Right.
San
Right.
Diego realtors, blah blah blah. So they're going to win in that stance. But if you're being very targeted and you're driving down all the way into your farm area, you can win at that. But you just got to understand that you're not going to get a lot of volume.
Right.
There's not a lot of people in the world who are searching for 4S ranch homes for sale. And if they
Right.
are, but they are very targeted, and you're able to capture them, you're going to get a couple leads out of it that'll be actually beneficial for you. And so
Right. Right.
that was something that we had to shift when I was working as head of digital marketing for an actual broker in 32 states. Was we had to shift our thinking from Houston real estate to actually
Mm.
going into the farm areas, because Houston real estate was costing us way too much money, and wasn't providing any benefit because it was people window shopping at that point.
Yeah.
If they're diving into a specific marketplace from a Google AdWords perspective, then they are more likely interested in buying in that area. So like, people would search, one of our number one search terms was homes near the golf course in Rancho Mirado. And
Right.
it's
Right.
long tail, and it's only maybe two people searching that a month, but those two people then we get in front of. And so you have to pair those, and do find different ways to be able to advertise directly to those people.
Okay. Okay. Well, the other part about this all that we're talking about is the advertising on Facebook and different things along those lines. The one thing that, even if it's not generating you even any seller leads or traffics to your open houses, or really any awareness whatsoever, the one thing that I believe that it really is fundamentally beautiful for is that you can take a post on Facebook or Instagram or wherever it may be, and then you can pull the hit report from it. Like, the other day, Chris, you did a video for us that had like 3,800 views, which was which was a reel. But then you take that to your seller and you show them, hey guys, this is the level of exposure that we're giving you. Now, yes, they can put two and two together that it's not the right type of people or whatever it may be. But why are they so in love with how many people look at their home or save their home on Zillow? It's because of the pure exposure that they need. And most of the time, a seller needs a process of elimination. When you put an offer in front of them, even if it's at the amount that they want, they still need to understand that you've done everything in your power in order to expose the property, and that no one else is out there that is looking to pay more for it. That is a peace of mind process of elimination for them to sign on the dotted line and feel good about it. And I think that this really helps with this stuff. But going one step further, signing the dotted line, once the property had sold or gone into escrow, what were the differences and what were you doing? Because I know that you'd spoken about the automation of people coming to the open house, sending them text messages through, what was it?
Easy text.
Easy text,
Yep.
EZ text. Is that right?
Yeah, the letter Z text, and
Yep.
there's other platforms. There's Twilio and stuff like that that you can utilize these days. That was just the easiest for us at the time.
Yep. So then would you, once the property had gone into escrow, or even if you'd had an offer, would you then send out to the list of people that were had come through as a point of contact?
100%.
Yeah.
And we would also enrich that list. And so the good part when it comes to the open houses and kind of utilizing that as your data, like gathering exercise, and that's what I would look at it as, is it's not a lot of data that it's impossible to enrich like yourself. So I can look through those, 80 people come through my open house or 100 people or 200 people, whatever it is. I can look through that and I can match that list with either title or I can match that list with a lot of things out there. And I can be able to see who's buyers, who's sellers, what does this look like?
Yep.
And from my personal experience too in the open house, I would take really good notes. And so I would say, possible buyer, possible seller, neighbor, XYZ. And so you're
Yeah,
able to,
man, it just pisses me off. Like, I'm sorry, I just been out of a rant. Walking into an open house and an agent is sitting there on their phone,
yeah.
not taking down people's information because they don't want to awkwardly ask them for information. Ultimately, coming into your space, into someone else's home, you should be getting their information regardless of whether it's legal or it's not legal or whatever it is. Like, you've got to, like, getting people's information is just so important to your business. It's so frustrating when you don't see people doing it.
And we looked at it as a security concern. 100%. We looked at it as, you're coming into my client's home. My client is trusting me. My client is not here right now,
Yep.
and we need a log of everybody who comes in. And then we would clearly ask them clearly. Would you want us, us to send you more information about this property, or more information about properties in the area, whatever we kind of thought from that standpoint, and that would basically opt them into marketing
Mm,
communications.
mm,
And
mm.
you can figure out your own legal jargon on how you would ask that and how you would get consent. But I would do that on every single one. And if they said no, I don't want to receive any emails, I don't want to receive any text messages, perfectly fine.
Yeah,
But
don't send
that's
them anything. Yeah,
yeah,
don't like
it,
again, they're not the people that are going to be communicating with you or possibly your future clients anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. And if they say no and they're that bullish, yeah, my goal was, well, by the time I get them through the property, to change that idea. And so
Yeah.
to give them enough value, to give them enough information, to give them enough handouts that I had at the open house, anything that it was, to give them enough value where they change their mind and they actually want me to communicate to them further. So that was my, like, I would have this selfish competitive goal if someone said no. And so like, I still have your information. I will not send you anything, but I still need it for the log and to make sure, if anything gets stolen or anything like that,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I have your information. But now it's internal selfish goal where I'm going to give you enough value and I'm going to like wow you and charm you, where now I'm going to make it so you want to receive texts and emails from me right after
And
this.
I think that another opportunity that it presents as well, and I know that this doesn't lead into the marketing or automation side of it, Chris, is that which I love because it just layers beautifully on top. If you've got somebody that's being a little bit of a hard ass on things, is that giving them a follow up call, ring ring ring. Hi, Chris, this is Ben Brady. I met you at 28 Smith Street over the weekend. Do you remember that property? Oh yeah, Chris. Chris, part of my obligation is actually to get some feedback from you so that I can give it to my clients so they can make a more informed decision around their real estate decisions. I just wanted to get your opinion of things, and again, like, they're probably not going to be a buyer of the property, but you're giving one, good feedback to your sellers, but two, hopefully showing a level of service that you can provide to them if they were ever looking at selling, because clarity is so important for people making decisions.
The other thing I would say too is don't be afraid to turn people away. Like a
Yeah.
100%. Don't be afraid. The one of the my shining glory stories was when people came into our property. Like we literally would say, our seller has requested, because of like the thefts that are happening in the area and everything like that, that everybody sign in and register in our open house. And this guy completely didn't want anything to do with this. He was like, we are not signing our names on this. You're just going to market to us, blah blah blah, which we were.
Yeah.
And so and so he was like, I'm not signing. I'm not giving away my personal data, XYZ. And I said, that's fine, sir. Per my seller's request, you can't come inside.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Yeah.
And I apologize. I can give you a flyer. Here's a flyer. If you have any more information or you want to schedule a private showing, feel free to reach out to me. My number's on the flyer. And then he tried to come back again. We said the same thing.
Yep.
He left again, and then tried to come back a third time, and we were like, "Oh man, this guy's walking across the lawn again. He's walking on the grass. Like, here we go." And he walks through and he goes, "Hey, I really want to see this property." I'm like, "Sir, we've told you twice already." And he goes, "I'm glad you're sticking by your guns. We're actually going to sell our home in the next 3 months, and we want an agent or a team who is going to be like for us. Like
Yeah.
they're going to be 100% in our court and do whatever we ask from that standpoint. Now they're going to, this kind of raised a little bit of red flags. Like there might be a tough seller in the future, but hey, a seller is a seller in that market. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, so that was one of our claim to fame stories by just sticking to our guns and sticking to what
Yeah.
we told them our sellers' wishes were. They 100% used us, brought us on the listing presentation, then we listed the home, which was
Well,
tremendous.
Chris, the one thing that we've done, and part of this is learning through this, is that the auction process, there is a legal obligation in order to get everybody's information, because you've got a set date on when an event is going to happen, to
Yep.
communicate with everybody that comes through. But also in the contract, it stipulates that the sellers request everybody to give you their information for the same reasons that you've given. If anyone feels uncomfortable with this, add it to your listing agreement as one of the conditions, or get a separate document, which is an addendum to the listing agreement, that literally stipulates, I, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, whatever the name is, request that everybody that enters my property, they give their name, phone number, and everything for security purposes. And then you actually have a legal reason or something to say, our sellers have requested this. And unfortunately, because it is their property, I'm going to respect their wishes and make sure that everyone gives details. As you said so eloquently, I think that people respect it. But also, guys, this is one of the reasons that on average, people are getting 3 more leads out of an auction than what you're getting traditionally, because of the obligation of people to give you the information, and the obligation to then follow up in order to understand where everything's going because of that set date. We're a little off track,
Yeah, a
so
little
I'm
bit.
gonna bring us back on track with just a little bit more, because this is really valuable stuff. Is that let's say the property's closed now. What's the process after that, mate, for you
Yeah.
guys?
So quickly, I would enrich that data a little bit, based on my own notes and based on title or anything else that I needed help with. So I would enrich that data a little bit, and then I would parse those people into different lists. And so I
Oh,
would
okay.
say these people are buyers, these people are sellers, these people are neighbors, and I would deliver them different information. So if they were buyers, I would send them directly out from that standpoint. If And I would send them, hey, this property just sold, but here's similar properties that you might be interested in. If they were potential sellers or most likely sellers, I would say, hey, this property sold. It directly influences the value of your home. Let's figure out what your home is worth. Let's sit down, XYZ. Are you free on this date? Blah, blah, blah. And this would be a personal email. It would look like a personal email
Yeah, yeah,
for a lot of these. It wouldn't seem marketing y, but it would be the same script that we'd run on pretty much all of our properties, unless we listed a home previously in a short period of time in that area. Then we would
yeah.
flip up the script a little bit. All those would go out automated. So I would have those scheduled for the moment we listed that property, for when we sold it, and
Right.
and then we would even invite people to basically not like a housewarming party, but it was like a seller celebration situation, like I don't know how to explain it, but it was
Oh,
kind of
no,
like
no.
an
Yeah, it's like
yeah,
welcome to the neighborhood, or
exactly,
goodbye, or a
yeah,
or
yeah,
farewell party, or
yeah.
something like that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was like a welcome to the neighborhood, and it was that situation, and we would encourage people to have this kind of like home like party situation for when the new people move in. And if the buyers weren't comfortable with that, we would never push it. But if they were nice and we knew them and everything like that, and we knew a lot of people in the area because it was our farm, they would move in, and we'd say, hey, we know a lot of people. We would love to, at the park down the street, have like kind of a welcome party. We would give them their gift, their closing gift at that point from a buyer standpoint, even though we didn't even represent that side. Little things like that just went a long way. So
Yeah.
we would automate a lot of the communications when it came to the sold, and then we would also post on Facebook. And that part was the only part that wasn't automated. We wanted it to be a real situation where it's our client talking about how happy they are, or it's handing over the keys at that point, or it's putting the sold sign on the actual sign, little things like that, or holding the sold sign in front of the house. Those were the only things that we didn't want automated, because we wanted those to be a very personal touch,
Mm.
very very emotional post, and everything like that, so people actually saw that we cared about our clients, and then we got the
Yeah.
right result for them.
Because automation is beautiful, and I think that it's wonderful, but you can fall into the trap of being too automated, and then it's too metallic. And then I've seen agents that, I think I've mentioned this before to you, is that that you don't even like their post anymore. You don't even take notice of it, because you're like, ah, another automated one, because it looks the exact same as everything else. But I guess that from an automation perspective, Chris, to sort of round this out, whilst people are relatively intimidated by some of the things that you've said, if they are, and they're not as curious as how to do this, is there Fiverr is a sort of a company that you can sort of ask, and put like something posted out there to say, hey, I'm looking for help to automate a process?
Yeah, there's a bunch of. I know there used to be like Odesk and Zendesk, or not Zendesk, but like the Odesk and stuff like that, and Upwork and Fiverr, and there's a lot of places that you can find kind of marketing automation. What I would say is the first category for that is find out what part of your business is just kind of that tedious part. It's that annoying part where it's like, man, I got to make another Facebook post, and whatever you're thinking that's like that, figure out how you can automate that.
Yeah.
And so if it's an email and it's like, man, I got to write this, like I keep failing on writing emails for my listings and not getting the most exposure for them.
Yeah.
Okay, automate that. And
Yes.
then you can kind of Google online and say, marketing automation, or, you can find someone who's around. But yeah, I would look at Fiverr, Upwork, any of those kind of like outsourcing
Yeah,
Elance and
they
stuff
could
like that.
because they could build it. They could build you some type of process and the way that it works, and then it's always going to need a little bit more attention than just individually building it. But it could give a really good landscape to how to ultimately use it. I know that Callista, who's our operations manager for Harcourts Auctions, she's built some automated systems through Airtable and Zapier integrations and all of these different things. That have worked for some of the teams that we work very closely with through their process of listing and everything along those lines. But I guess without going down too deep a rabbit hole, anything else to add, mate?
I would say with the things of like, this might be a rabbit hole, but with the things of like AI and everything that's coming out there, there are a lot of ways to automate everything from your property description to your emails. Like there's things out there, Chat GPT, if you haven't heard it already, dive into it and take a look at it and how people are using it from a real estate standpoint. I would do some research. We'll probably have an episode completely centered around
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. There's ways to automate literally everything from
Yeah.
the head to the toe of your business. And I would say from any communications, even just seller updates and stuff like that. Like there are ways to automate a lot of that. So you're sending text messages to sellers. Doesn't seem automated, it doesn't feel automated, but it does help you streamline your business a little bit, especially if you are, a one person shop.
Yeah, I think sitting down and doing a content calendar of every touch point of your process that you're looking to do to then have an ideal platform can really help in the automation of it. And like again, it's not going to automate 100% of every touch point that you want in every scenario, but if it can take away at least 50% of it, then it's 50% less that you have to think about from a consistency perspective. Thanks, Chris.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
the gems, the pearls of wisdom when it comes to the marketing landscape that is out there. So, about 75% of our audience hasn't liked, followed, or subscribed to our podcast. It would mean the world to us, and it would help this podcast more than you know to expand our reach if you were to like, follow, or subscribe on any of the platforms that you're watching or listening on. Thanks again.